Alrighty, let's go. Welcome guys, welcome to the tripod. My name's Alex, and as you can see, I don't have Jacob with me today. I don't know what's happened with our internet. For some reason, one of our internets or both of our internets are absolutely fucked. As you know, we're always searching for value, so we both have fairly cheap internet, so that's what may be the problem this week. So it'll just be me tonight breaking down the round of the NRL for week 4. We actually had pretty much one of our worst weeks that we've ever had on the pod. 4-14 on our best bets, and everyone's been slinging shit at us, and fair enough, Jacob bailed on the pod. You can sling shit at me, that's fine. 4-14 is a really bad round, and that's nothing to be proud of for us. It is abnormal for us to have a bad round like that, but even so, I mean, we're still 55% on the season over the first 4 weeks, and we're still up on our multis overall. So I think overall, you'd be up still roughly a little under $1,000, I think, maybe a little bit less than that, but you're definitely still in profit if you'd followed all our tips as well. Jacob's going to chime in, commenting there on the live pod. But yeah, it's just going to be a short one today, going through my thoughts on the games anyway, starting from the Thursday night game with the Roosters beating the Broncos 36-4. Really, really brutal game for us. I mean, when we initially talked about this, we were kind of hesitant in taking the Broncos. We liked the under, and we kind of half disagreed on the Broncos, but then we kind of heard, personnel news and that kind of stuff coming through, and we decided to go with the Bronx. The line closed like 3.5, and the thing is, it's like we kind of say every single week, you want to try and beat the closing number, and that's what we did. We got Bronx plus 2.5 points in the first half. That was not available come game time. But the Roosters, and all of our bets almost weren't available come game time. So we beat the market. The issue is we went 0-5, which is really, really bad start to the week. But the Roosters were too good. And we kind of thought that this might be the case. We thought that the Roosters would show up. But we thought the Broncos would as well. I mean, the guys were 1-2 heading into week 4. And now they're 1-3. But the Roosters, Luke Keary has been stepping up in the last few weeks. He's been playing absolutely great. Tedesco may be the best player in the NRL right now. Who's going to argue with me if I say that? I don't think too many people. But I guess the story of the round was bloody Tevita Pangai Jr. Everyone a couple of weeks ago was praising the guy. Oh my God, pick him for Origin, best forward in the game, all this kind of shit. And then he goes and just absolutely puts a dog shot on Cooper Cronk. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. He might be gone for a couple of weeks or maybe even more, and the Broncos will struggle without him. What I did want to say is, your forwards can only do so much. I know we came into the season and people were very high on the Broncos. This is one of the best forward packs in the comp. And I think you could probably still argue that, now that Tevita Pangai Jr. is out, etc. But you could have argued that the Broncos may have had the best forward pack in the comp coming into it. But you really need your spine to be able to step up. And Milford and Nikorima haven't done that. Darius Boyd is well and truly over the hill. I said this about 3 years ago that the guy should have retired then. Should have retired 3 years ago, should have retired 2 years ago, and this year he's fully past the hill. He is well and truly over the hill. He is one of the bottom 6 fullbacks in the comp, I would say, and it's just really, really tough. Your forwards can only do so much for you, and Darius Boyd's really costing that team, and so are the halves, really. The Broncos really do need to step it up, but that was a bad start to the week for us, and it went from bad to worse, because we trusted the Titans, getting the halves back, 0-3, and generally, when you get a team in a very, very short NRL season that's 0-3, generally they do step up in that 4th game. And we thought that the Titans would step up here. We also knew that it was a good spot for the Warriors off 2 back-to-back drubbings where their defense had been absolutely terrible, let in over 40 points on average over the last 2 weeks. We knew that the Warriors would step up, but we thought with the Titans halves back, they're probably the better team than the Warriors. We believed that from the start of the season. But it was just the amount of mistakes from the Titans. It was unbelievable. And that's what's kind of, a consistent thread through this entire round, was just the amount of mistakes from all these NRL teams. They could not hold on to the ball, terrible 4th and 5th tackle options, and you just have to look at the completion rate. 91% for the Warriors. Very, very hard to lose when you do that. But on top of that, 69% from the Titans. It's just not good enough from a completion rate standpoint. They had their chances. They're in that game. Just too many errors from the Titans, and they really do need to improve. And I guess it is kind of to be expected. First game back for the halves. They will improve, but at the same time, you're 0-4. You really need to get a move on if these Titans are going to want to finish top 8, which I guarantee they had aspirations for that coming into the season. Next up, the Panthers beat the Tigers 9-8 in what was one of the more entertaining games of the round for the last 10 minutes. The rest of the game was absolute garbage. And I know Aaron Mullins said it was a great game, but let's be fair, it was a pretty poorly played game. The Panthers won, sure, great win for them. But once again, errors is the theme of the round. Panthers 60% completion rate. That's absolutely horrific for the NRL, and you should not be able to win an NRL game with 60% completion rate. But the thing is, when you're playing a team like the West Tigers, and we've kind of said this last year, the Tigers had a lot of close wins. They didn't score many points, but their defense held up. They got a few wins over good teams early on, and they were able to sneak around the 8 there. But this Tigers team, it can't put on that many points, and it's like when you get in all these close games, and you can't score many points, you have to be able to win every single one of those close games. Because if you can't score 20, 30 points a game, I know they did that, they've done that this year already, but when you can't put some points on, you need to win every single close game. The Tigers didn't do it. They let that game slip. They missed three drop goals, which is absolutely ridiculous. But the Panthers, I'll tell you what, they are a confidence team. They'll get a confidence boost for that. And I'll tell you, that team is full of talent. And they should be able to continue on that roll on for the rest of the season. But very, very good win for the Panthers, despite, like I said, a 60% completion rate, which is just absolutely horrific. Next up, in what was one of the more entertaining games of the round, I thought, was Manly beating the Rabbits 13-12. Bad news, obviously, coming out of the Manly camp that Tommy Turbo, with the first hit up of the second half, goes down with a hammy injury again. He's probably going to be gone for a little while, which really, really hurts that Manly side. But once again, it was a kind of a pros versus Joes kind of game. Rabbits 3-0, looking good. All of the public was on the Rabbits. But that Manly line really came in, and I mean, GI got ruled out, sure enough, but like we've said in past pods, he doesn't really move the needle for us that much. But I mean, the line came in from 5.5 at open, and it closed around 2.5 points. So there was sharp money on Manly. It was the right side to be on. And of course, we have 3 best bets on it and get super unlucky to not cash all 3. I mean, we had Manly plus 3.5 points in the first half, and I think they lost it by 4. The Manly defense, certainly a talking point. That defense was absolutely great, and I'm telling you, from a betting standpoint, we really have to look at this Manly team moving forward as a dead nut under team. There are certain teams where you go through the season where you say, this team's an over team or this team's an under team or whatever, where most of their games either trend under or you want to bet them to go over. Over teams obviously have spread the ball early, like South last year, spread the ball early and often, and have an average defense. And then under teams obviously have, very, very good defense and lack something in attack. Like a Bulldogs team historically is an under team. We have to start thinking about this Manly team, especially without Tommy Turbo, as a dead nut under team. They couldn't score that many points. They obviously got the win 13-12. But the defense really, really stepped up and was very, very impressive. To have a completion rate of 58% for Manly and still get the win there is a very, very good effort. And props to Manly, to be honest, because the amount of errors that they made in that game and were still able to come up with the win, very, very impressive. And also, obviously, with losing Turbo for the entire second half. Next up, we had the Raiders beating the Cowboys 30-12. We only had one play on the game and we lost it. We played the Cowboys first half because we kind of said that, this Raiders team looks like one of the fitter teams in the comp, and the Cowboys team didn't. And, I'm going to have to maybe eat some humble pie here. I was very high on a few teams coming into the start of the season. I was high on the Eels. I was right on that. I was high on the Raiders. I was right on that. But I was very, very high on the Cowboys. I thought that they would be a great team coming into the season. They have not been. And to be honest with you, I underestimated the loss of Taumalolo. I understand that he is the best forward in the comp. but they really look like they miss him. I mean, they looked really, really gassed. They've looked really gassed, to be honest, in the last 3 weeks, the Cowboys have. And to be honest, I know that they were close there at the end. It was 18-12 and they had their chances, but the Raiders were much, much better than the Cowboys in that game. And I think that a 30-12 score, even though the Raiders scored, the last couple of tries in that game, I think that was probably a fair enough score. The Raiders dominated that game from start to finish. The Cowboys forwards did not get much go forward, whereas the Raiders did. And at the end of the day, it's the same kind of thing. It's just like discipline and being able to complete sets. I think if you go through the entire round, the team that completed the most sets or had the highest completion rate, I think covered 7 out of the 8 games this week, with the exception being Manly, who completed 58%. But if you go through the entire round, it's not that hard playing the NRL. You've just got to complete your sets, get to the end of your sets, make good plays on 4th and 5th tackle options, and you'll win the game. And the Cowboys just weren't able to do that. Once again, 64% completion rate. That is not good enough in the NRL. Something needs to change there, and honestly, I don't know if it can flip around that quickly when the forwards are really, really struggling without Taumalolo, and Michael Morgan does not look like the same guy that he did 2 years ago. Next up, we had the Eels beating the Sharks 24-12. This was one of the games of the round for me, and I'll tell you, there were 2 games that were very, very entertaining and probably the best quality football of the round. And this was the Eels beating the Sharks 24-12, and the next game that I'll talk about, which is the Storm beating the Dogs 18-16. And I'll tell you what was in common with those games, because I think if you asked a lot of people, what were the best quality games of the round, they might agree and say that it was the Eels-Sharks game and the Storm-Bulldogs game. And you know what was the common thread amongst those 2 games? The only 2 games where both teams completed 80% or more of their sets. So it wasn't just a mistake-riddled fucking game, which I thought was most of the round. It was just, so many mistakes, so many terrible, terrible mistakes, dropped balls, all this kind of shit from a bunch of teams. But the Eels-Sharks game was great. Eels completed 83%, Sharks completed 85%. Very, very high-quality game. Obviously, I was high on the Eels coming into this game. We didn't have a play on it. But the Eels, very, very impressive. And I'll tell you what else I'll say. Because like with the Cowboys, it's kind of tough. When their forwards are coming out of trouble, they look gassed, all that kind of shit. But you got the Eels team. They got Fergo who can bring them out of trouble, take a hit up when they're in their own half. You got Sebo on the other wing that can take a hit up when they need to come out of trouble, and it really, really helps the forwards. I mean, those 2 wingers are basically tackling two hit ups every single set, coming out of trouble, and I think it really helps that Eels team. They look like one of the fittest teams in the comp. They are running hard for a full 80 minutes, and to be honest, with the talent that they have, Mitchell Moses is playing great. With the talent that the Eels have, they are making the most of their team, and honestly, I'm very, very happy for this Eels team. They've put in, obviously, you can see it in the off-season. Fergo's gone to another level. I know he didn't have his best game that game against the Sharkies, but this Eels team is going to be very, very hard to beat moving forward. They just look fitter. They just look like they're putting in more effort than other teams, and they should be where they are on the ladder, to be honest. Moving on to the Sharks, valiant effort by them. I know they had some injuries, obviously. Moylan was scratched before the game. Aaron Woods went out with an ankle injury. They reckon he'll be out for a few weeks. You had Sean Johnson scratched, obviously, within an hour before kickoff. Paul Gallen, obviously. And then, we said it at the start of the season, this Sharks team is going to be good if they're fully healthy. They're not fully healthy at the moment, and dead set Dugan looks like a twig. He went down like 3 times in that game, and it's the Dugan that we always kind of know. It just always seems like he's 1 tackle away from possibly dying. So I would start to worry about the Sharks team once they're not at full strength. But very, very impressive win from the Eels there. Moving on to the Storm beating the Bulldogs 18-16. Really, really entertaining game for me. I really liked this one. Dogs had their chances, but like I said kind of last year, with this Dogs team, it seems like they kind of come into the game, they're looking to spread the ball, they're looking to offload, they're looking to spread the ball early, all that kind of stuff in the first half, and then it kind of goes away second half, and that's kind of what we saw here. I mean, the Bulldogs were sitting on 12 points at half time, and then, it kind of just went away, and really the only try that they scored was in the final few minutes when it was desperation time, and Reece Martin couldn't kick the goal there to level things up. But Storm, I think, just came out a little bit flat. And this is the thing, as bettors, you got to kind of look at these teams that have just been absolutely dominating, and I guarantee the whole public was on the Storm. And you got to kind of look for these letdown spots, and I think this may have been a letdown spot. You watched the game, you saw the Storm came out really, really sluggish, got into a 12-0 hole, and then kind of dug their way out of there. And to be honest, got lucky to come away with the win there. But the Bulldogs played very, very well, and it was just unlucky for them that they couldn't put on any points in that second half, apart from in the final few minutes. And Reece Martin happened to absolutely shank the kick, which is very disappointing for Dogs fans. I know that they all would have been super stoked for that. You're up 12-0 against the fucking Melbourne Storm, and then you just let it slip, and then you have a chance at the end with a guy that's made 31 out of 34 kicks, and he just misses it by about 20 metres. So, don't take much away from the Storm, to be honest. I think they might have just overlooked the Dogs after a couple of tough games, but Dogs came out well. But I'll say this once again, if you're looking to bet Dogs, I think it's a good idea to bet them first half rather than the full game. I think that they're kind of, once they get the lead, their tactics seem to change a little bit, and they do get a little bit safer. And then the game that we just watched was the Dragons beating the Knights 13-12. Fairly entertaining game. I guess we were on the Knights, obviously, as you can see in the screenshot there. We lost both our bets on that, and to be honest, I feel like we were quite unlucky to lose that. Knights were by far the better team in the first half, I think, but to be honest, Dragons were much better in the second half, and I think the Knights were starting to get a little bit fatigued there. Fifth tackle options were average from the Knights in the second half. And it's not that hard to figure out. We've said this for ages. It's like you can't have Ponga in the halves. They finally move him to fullback to start the game, and they started the game great. They're up 12-6. Ponga sets up 2 tries with 2 absolutely great passes. And then where did he go in the second half? He did not get enough pill. You need to give this guy some ball in space to work his magic. You pretty much got space twice in the first half. He set up 2 tries. And then in the second half, he barely got any ball at all. Mitchell Pearce is great for, in-game kicking, ball control, that kind of stuff. But when you need a try, you have to be able to give it to Kalen Ponga. The guy is a freak. The guy is great. And he just did not see any ball in the second half. It was very, very disappointing. And the Knights, to be honest, they probably should have lost by more. I thought that the Dragons were all over them in that second half. And to be honest, I guess kind of lucky that we only had 2 plays on that one. But I feel like we got kind of unlucky with our plays as well, even though the Dragons were the better team. The Knights should have been able to score 20 or more points after being on 12 in the first half. That'll do it. It's very quick one this week without Jacob, obviously. So that'll do it for this week, guys. We'll hopefully have our technology better next week. But like we said, a very, very disappointing round for us, going 4-14 on best bets. And you can sling shit at me all you like, but we are still in profit for the year. And we've been doing this for a long time. I mean, me and Jacob have been betting for over a decade now. And we've been doing the pod for over 4 years now, and we're still hitting 60% over 4 years. So we are still up long term. And you don't worry about too much about 1 week's results. Yes, you may have lost some money this week. You got to kind of research the games, watch over them again, learn from it. And like we said, 2 weeks ago, we haven't had back-to-back losing weeks in over a year now. So not about to start now. Hopefully we'll have another winning week next week. But that'll do it for this week, guys. Look, tune in at 6 p.m. Queensland time. I guess daylight savings is wound back, so I guess it's 6 p.m. for everyone now. 6 p.m. Queensland time on Wednesday, and we will go through the round 5 slate and hopefully have a better week than this week. I think we surely should. Catch you then, guys. See ya.